Hello and welcome to That's So Nova. If this is your first time onto my channel, welcome. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. Today we're going to be doing a country cow pattern called My First Tote. I absolutely love this bag. If you're newer to bag making and you're wanting to try out a pattern, this might be the perfect pattern for you, especially if you're brand new and you want to just like dive right in. This also might be the pattern for you if you want to make cute little totes that you can give away as gift bags, get like teacher gifts, great for craft fairs, for the holidays, trick-or-treat bags, you name it, this bag is for it. So to begin, I wanted to go over the anatomy of the bag real quickly. The bag has a three-dimensional shape because of the box pleats. Okay, look at the fussy cutting. And then it is stable, like it's nice and structured and can stand on its own because of the fleece that we use inside, as well as the Shapeflex 101. There are handles that are straps that are cut to measure. You can adjust that as you will. And it is really nice and simple and clean on the inside, where there are you can't see any stitches because the way we're about to close this bag up. So you can add cute little themes to it if you want, like labels. You can play around with interfacing, but I definitely recommend you to follow the instructions the first time and then play with it as long as to whatever you feel will be great. So what we're going to need is a marking tool of some sort. I'm using a chalk pencil, and in some spots so that you guys can see, I will be using a pink pen. It's just like a big pen. You're going to need clips. You can use Wonder clips, hair clips, whatever you have available to you. Some scissors. You're going to need your two lining pieces. I'm using duck canvas because it's a very structured, this is like a 13 ounce, so it doesn't really need any interfacing. As you can hear, it's pretty thick. They use this in most bags that are mixed with wax canvas, so I'm using that. For my exterior, I'm using a nice cotton that I interface with Shapeflex 101, and then you can see the fusible fleece, not in the seam allowance, but throughout it. Follow per the instructions. You need to cut out 2 linings, 2 exteriors, and Shapeflex 101 for the bags and for the pattern pieces that need it, and then 2 pieces of fleece to fuse on top of your external fabrics. Make sure everything is fused nice and well and nothing's picking up, that all the corners are fused down. Sometimes if you're newer to bag making, fleece can be a little bit finicky about adhering. If you spritz it with water and then press it, the steam will help activate the glue and it will work. You might experience a little bit of shrinkage, but nothing that you would be devastating or ruin the project. So I like to leave my fabrics together to cool down for about 30 minutes to an hour before I start a project, to really make sure that everything adheres really correctly. So this is another lining. Okay, so you would need to buy your pattern. The pattern, I will put a link to the description where you could purchase it, and then you can follow along. So Adam and Joe made a really solid pattern, and I love the way this bag comes together. So let's start with page 1. On page 1, there are directions. There are 3 sizes to this pattern. There's mini, there's a middle, and then there's a bigger one. I like the mini, so we're going to be doing it again. I have my 2 pieces of webbing to go with the bag as well. So let's start with this. I'm going to take my mat, that I have a pressing mat, and move it to the side. And I'm going to make sure that my fabric is going the right direction. And I always do this with any bag. It's a good habit to have. I like to clip my bag in place and then snip the centers. So the seam allowance for here is 3/8 of an inch in most areas. So I'm not going to snip more than 1/4 of an inch, just to make sure that I can always find the center of my beginning of the bag and bottom. So My fabric has multi-direction, so pretty much I could put it any direction and it will look fantastic. Just figure out what works best for you. Then I'm going to flip it on the back and I'm going to draw a 2-inch square for the mini. There's different sizes for each size, size, so please look on page 6 in the first paragraph, not the first paragraph, the first step. It gives you different measurements. So I'm going to draw out my box that I'm going to cut out, and I use my pick pen and I have my ruler, and I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut. Okay, so we have these all cut. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to, you already fused your stabilizer and you centered everything. Let me get this excess off. I'm going to make some marks from each side to where I'm going to be placing my webbing. I'm going to grab my chalk pencil and just put a mark so I can see. If it's hard for you to see, you can use another pen or a pencil and put it within the seam allowance. Just don't go past the drawing mark. Don't go like draw a 1-inch line down. Just make it like 1/4 of an inch so that way no one will see it, but you will be able to recognize it. I'm going to do this for my other exterior piece. I'm taking my ruler, I'm measuring it from the side where the directions tell me to mark. On step 4, there's different measurements for each size. I am doing the mini, I'm sorry. All right. So then we're going to take our webbing and we want an overhang of 2 inches. So what I like to do is measure it 2 inches down from each short end and just draw a line with a chalk pencil or a pen. And then that's where I'm going to have the overhang. Now, where we want the webbing to face towards the loop part to face towards the outside of the bag, the bottom part of the bag. We're going to have our overhang and we're going to clip it in place, and we're going to put our webbing within the line, not outside the line we drew, but within the line. I'm just going to put a couple clips there, and then I'm going to grab my other piece and I'm going to do the same. We have a 2-inch overhang, and the line that we just drew, that little 1/4 of an inch, we're going to put our webbing inside the line, not outside the line. Make sure your strapping and webbing is not twisted, so everything is nice and straight. You don't want your handle to be twisted later on, so just take the time, make sure everything is straight. You can just have it, pull it straight, nice and taut, and then bring it down. It's easy to get it twisted. I do it all the time. And just double check before you sew. We're going to stitch this in place. Just baste it in place using a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to just do that again. Pull it out straight. Make sure that it's not twisted anyways. And then I'm going to bring it over to my machine. And I'm using a 9014 needle, because that's what I had in previous and I didn't change it. I feel like you don't really need a big needle for this, but 9014 will really get over that webbing. And I am going to sew at a stitch length of 3. And I'm back stitching well at the beginning and the end. And I'm going to trim my threads. We have one basted down. We're going to go over here. We're going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pull my threads so it can meet. Okay, so we have this. Now we're going to take this and we're going to put it right sides together. And what I like to do is really make sure that everything matches up as best as I can. And clip it into place. I think I went a little outside of my line on here, which is okay. I did not go within the right line on this one. So I'm just going to remove those stitches real quick. Reconfirm my measurements and baste it on the right area because I want my handles to match, and if it sometimes it happens. That's why we measure, you know, measure twice, cut once. Same thing, same kind of rule applies with measuring. And see, and now everything is aligning really beautifully. Okay, so I'm going to put some clips, making sure everything lines up, and tucking things out of the way. All right, we're going to sew down using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance down this side. We're going to start, go back stitch, stitch all the way down, and then we're going to back stitch down here. We're going to stitch it down on the bottom seam, 3/8 of an inch, back stitching before and in at each seam. And then we're going to go up. Let's bring it to our machine. Take your time, don't forget to breathe, and back stitching is key. I like to back stitch anywhere from 3 to 5 stitches, to be honest with you. I don't try to make any room for error when it comes down to it. And then I'm just going to bring my threads on over when I stitch the bottom, and I'll trim them all up later. And then just move your webbing to make sure it's not in your way. And if you interface correctly where the fusible fleece is not in the way, it should be perfectly aligned with your stitches, and you'll see it works out really nice. Okay, so I'm going to bring this over and I'm going to trim these threads. All right, and I'm going to bring, I have this thing called a ham. They use this in tailoring a lot. It helps open up seams that are rounded, or when you need to stick something in it. Opening, you can, if you don't have a ham, you can roll up a towel and you can stick it inside your bag. We're going to open up these seams and press them. So take your time, just press them open. Pressing open your seams help evenly distribute the weight of the fabric. They don't have to be perfect, but really try to get in there. It'll help at the end when you're trying to close the bag. It helps let the seams fall nice and flat. We're going to open these seams up too. You can finger press and use a seam roller if you wish to. You don't have to iron, but I don't know. Sometimes ironing really can be that last thing that helps the bag look nice and crisp and have well-defined seams. And so I'm going to open up this top part up here. And just press this open. Be careful, don't burn your fingers. There are hot gloves that you can use to get in with for the bag too. It's also a nice garment tool that sometimes I utilize when I'm sewing bags. So I'm going to put this one to the side, and we're going to basically kind of do the same thing for the lining pieces, except we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to put these together. We're going to clip, just clip them all together. All right. So what we're going to do here for the lining is a little bit different. We are going to start off at 3/8 of an inch on the top, and then we're going to veer to a 1/2 inch, back stitching really well at the beginning and end. When we get to the bottom, we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam, back stitching beginning and end. Start off at a 1/2 inch seam on the other side, and then veer it to a 3/8 of an inch, and always back stitching. So let's bring it over to the sewing machine and start with 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to veer it to a 1/2 inch. By doing this, we're going to not have a saggy inside. And then I'm going to bring it on over to a 1/2 inch on the bottom. Starting off with the 1/2 inch, and then we're going to veer it to 3/8 inch when we get to the top. Okay. And in case you're wondering, I am working on a DL 5550. And if you're familiar with Juki, it's very similar to the Juki QVP Mini, except it just has the motor on the outside that's visible versus the inside. So we're on page 7, and we're going to do the same thing. You can press open these side seams. And you can just take it on one side and press it, and then do it on the other. And that's, you can just press open the seams that way too. Lay it flat. Let me just grab this real quick. You're just pressing it open. Okay. I'm just going to press open this bottom one just one more time because I don't think I got to it really good. Okay. And put my iron down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to box these corners. We're going to stick our hand inside the bag and kind of, I like to pull on the sides to make this mouth. That's how I look at it. I think of it as a fish mouth. gobble, gobble, gobble. And I'm going to match the seams. I'm going to have that area that I ironed. It's going to make it nice and flat. And I'm going to place a clip. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to put my hand in, and then I'm going to kind of squish it down a little bit until the lines perfectly align. And then I'm going to make sure seam to seam, and I'm going to put a clip. We're going to bring this to the machine and sew this at 3/8 of an inch. I like to backstitch really well at the beginning and end of this. And whenever I'm at a seam, I like to backstitch a few stitches on that. Now, I get a lot where Shinova, I sewed a bag, and when I birthed it, I can see the stitch lines. If that happens to you, then what you can do is sew another row of stitching right underneath the stitching you just made, and this will, one, reinforce the bottom, two, will not show any threads. So let's do this 3/8 of an inch on the other side. Back stitching well. All right. Then we're going to get the other one. We're going to sew then we're going to get the other one, and we're going to sew at 3/8 of an inch as well. So I'm going to grab my clips. I'm going to bring this together. And make sure that the little mouth lines up and the seam matches up. And see, when you press the seams, everything's nice and flat for you. And let's sew this at 3/8 of an inch. And we're going to do it on the other side. And just squish down your bag. It's going to be fine. All right. So now we're going to hop on over to page 8. And we are going to make some marks on the main exterior. We're going to make a gap, and it's in between the handles that we're going to make the gap. So let me put this in here. So in between your handles is the gap that you're going to have to birth this bag. So what I'm going to do, so you can see, if I can find my pink pen again, there it goes. I'm going to draw a line here and here. We're going to put the interior right sides out. We need to turn this right sides out. I'm just gonna poke out the corners. All right, and then we're going to place it in the inside of the bag. So right sides touching right sides. What I like to do is line up the two seams, and I'm going to place a clip and do the same thing on this side. Line up the two seams, and then we're going to place a clip. So remember the notches I had you make earlier? I like to match those. to make sure everything just is aligned nice and tight. But you're not going to clip into the area that we marked between those two lines, because those are going to be our starting and stopping points. Now, when we sew this bag, we need to come in an L shape. We're going to be sewing this with using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you need to come in a 1/2 inch down, and you can draw a 1/2 inch, and then we're going to go all the way around using a 1/2 inch to come back to that line and sew up. So they're like little L's that we're sewing into the bag to help bring this bag together when we are finished. So I'm going to start here on my left hand side, and I'm going to stitch down. I'm kind of squishing my bag out of the way. Stitch down an L, and I'm going to back stitch about 3 or 4 stitches. And I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch all the way around. Now, what you can do is, if you don't have a seam guide that can help you, you can draw your 1/2 inch all the way around prior to, like, when you're interfacing and fusing. You can start on the right hand side. I'm sorry, I always start to the left. And if you start or stop, have your needle down. It helps tremendously. And I'm just going to open up this bag, place my scissors over here so I don't accidentally let them drop on me. And I'm going to go a 1/2 inch all the way around, and I'm just maneuvering the bag. A little by little. And it's easy for me to follow the 1/2 inch mark because of how the interfacing is. Okay. And you could back stitch over the webbing if you wish. Oops, there goes another clip, right? All right, I'm getting close to that other L mark. And then I'm just going to go up, and I'm going to back stitch a couple stitches. All right. Let me trim these threads. Okay, so we have our opening for our berth. We're gonna see that opening. You're going to take your hand and pull gently your lining out. From there, you should start be able to pull your exterior as well as your handles. So I'm just gonna finesse this. Take your time. And I'm just going to take my hand through that birthing hole, and I'm just going to take my time and poke out all the corners of my bag. And I'm going to do the same thing on the lining side. Then I'm going to bring the lining into the wrong side of the exterior. Take your time. I have some extra threads that are poking out. I'm just gonna roll this up. And you see the lining opening automatically kind of already wants to curve in on itself because there was a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to clip the top in place as I adjust things. Get any extra threads out of the way before I sew. This is super cute. All right, and then, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get these threads that are nice and stuck. I'm gonna clean that up later. We're going to top stitch. Now you could use fabric glue to hold this in place, this little gap. You can use clips. You can iron it in place, give it a good nice press. Whatever works easier for you. I'm just gonna put some clips in it and take my time. We're gonna top stitch this entire part closed. So you're gonna clip, and we're going to use a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and we're going to top stitch the whole thing. So I'm going to just put the machine, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can trust your bobbin and put the whole bag in and sew from the lining, or you can kind of flip it like this and sew from the exterior, or turn it, my favorite is insides out. And then I'm stitching from the inside of my machine, but I'm stitching on the exterior side of the fabric. So that way I feel like I have a little bit more control. Have your webbing sticking straight out. If you sew like this underneath, then the webbing is going to go underneath. So just have your webbing straight out when you're sewing. I like to start stitching from a seam, so my back stitches are kind of concealed a little bit, and I'll go from there. And I'm back stitching like a few stitches, not a whole lot, but enough to help. And we're just taking our time and breathing. And we're almost done. And then I'm going to trim these threads. Grab these threads real quick because it's going to drive me batty. You know how I don't like threads. Using muslin or duck cloth can be a little bit, it frays. There's no nice way of really saying it, but I love the end result. It's very structured fabric. It holds well with water. It's just a great product to work with. All right, and more threads. Okay, I think I got them all. I think, yeah. So there you have it. We're all done. This cute little bag is perfect for so many things. Even if you didn't want to put a handle, this would be a cool thread basket or scrap collector, or just different things, holding yarn, holding treats, holding rocks, whatever you have. It can hold a lot of different sewing notions too. Having fabric collections in there, a nice gift to gift to another sewist, like maybe some fat quarters and a project, and you put it in a little bag that you make. This bag is super cute and can be used for so many different reasons and so many different things. So that is it for this bag. You're complete. You finished your first tote. hair high five. You can't see my high five. And I hope everyone enjoyed this. If you like this tutorial, please like it and give it a thumbs up. If you think it's worthy, definitely share. It helps the channel. If you want to comment down below what your favorite country cow pattern is, that helps out tremendously. If you want to see another country cow pattern to have a tutorial, please comment down below too. I really appreciate everybody here, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day and happy sewing. Bye-bye.